So excited to introduce you to two amazing young LA local entrepreneurs who I happen to call friends of mine. These girl bosses have an awesome story about taking the leap from their corporate jobs to follow their passion. While studying architecture at UC Berkeley, Natasha, here on the right, had the idea of educating consumers about architecture and design through an inventive, unexpected platform: food. While obtaining her master's degree from UCLA and working at Walt Disney Company, her concept evolved into a refined vision involving ice cream. In 2009, when Natasha met her partner, Freya, the two worked together to bring her architecture and ice cream idea and establish the brand Coolhaus. Coolhaus, their innovative gourmet design-laced dessert company, has taken the country by storm over the past 6 years after officially launching in 2009 at Coachella out of a beat-up van they found on Craigslist. Fast forward to today, and they have a national fleet of trucks, 2 storefronts in LA, Pasadena, Culver City, and they distribute their Coolhaus prepackaged pints, bars, and iconic sandwiches in over 5,000 retail stores across the country. They were named Zagat 30 Under 30 in 2012, Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2013, and they've been featured in just about every news outlet you've ever heard of. New York Times, Huffington Post, Fast Company. Just last year, they released their first book, highlighting not only their recipes, but also how they dealt with growth obstacles and advice for fellow entrepreneurs. Last October, they launched their second venture, because one wasn't enough, called Ludlow's, which is a jelly shot brand, which I'll let them share more about, but I think you guys will be interested. You ready?
Yeah.
Sure. Good.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for having us on April Fool's no less. We're going to talk about ice cream and, talk about it some more. I'm, as Lauren said, I'm Natasha.
I'm Freya Estreller. Yeah.
Yes, Coolhaus ice cream. Hopefully some of you have had it. Yes.
Nice.
Good. All cheers, no booze. Good. We founded Coolhaus Ice Cream in 2009, as Lauren said. So if you can, go back in your time vault to 2009, I think you guys were all born then. It was a very different time. There was not the gourmet mobile dessert, gourmet mobile food truck kind of world that we have today. That was much more of a kind of an unknown and much less populated. Certainly no gourmet mobile dessert. Craft ice cream was really at a different stage, thinking 5-6 years back. Probably some of you, if you've had Coolhaus, we have like the brown butter candied bacon ice cream, fried chicken and waffles, a lot of smoky, sweet, salty. And there's kind of been a whole movement, I like to say revolution because I went to Berkeley, of just craft ice cream, and it's happened across a lot of different food mediums. So that was very new. Social media, thinking back to 2009, I was just looking at celebrities' first tweets from like 2009, 2010. A lot of them, it just cuts off after 140 characters. They didn't even know how to. So it's such a different mentality. Instagram not even being around, and everything that social media became handy for communicating geographic-based information, for example. The recession also occurring, which, as Lauren said, I was coming out of architecture and reinventing the kind of our career path with this vision that we had, and Freya coming from a real estate background also. So thinking of taking very different you're on a set path coming out of school, and then all of a sudden this the change in the economy really shook things up.
I think I was having a quarter life crisis, because in that picture we're 25 and 26, and I think when you're in the workforce for a couple years, you start to question, like, wait a minute, is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? I was in real estate development and finance, nice, cushy finance project management job, and I wanted to get into the food industry, and looked up, like, okay, if I go to Cordon Bleu, how much is that? $60,000 at a 14% interest rate. No, thank you. So when we met, I thought this is a great way for me to explore that industry while getting paid for it. And really, when we met, I thought it was an art project. She was at Disney Imagineering making these ice cream and cookies at home and naming them after architects like Mies Vanilla Row after Mies van der Rohe, and Frank Berry after Frank Gehry. Yeah. Totally nerdy and elitist, and I thought, this is hysterical. How do we get this out there? And I asked her, just having kind of a finance background, what's your cost per unit? And she said, I don't know, I spent $80 at Whole Foods. And I was like, ugh, okay. So I put together a quick pro forma.
Technical architect.
Yeah, I went to Cornell, so I had a lot of friends in like the hotel school that were like happy and gracious enough to help me. And we thought, okay, we don't know anything. Like, how do we get these gourmet ice cream sandwiches out there? Do we launch them at supermarkets? No, we have no idea how to deal with large scale manufacturing. We don't know how to do that. Do we build a brick and mortar? We don't have $250,000 to do that. No. And at that point, Kogi had just started, and like a light bulb went off. We were like, wait a minute, no one has reinvented the ice cream truck. We Googled cool, hip ice cream truck, and the only thing that came up was Hart's Challenger, which I don't know if you know, they sell like records and like bomb pops and Choco Tacos from a little truck. And I thought, okay, here's our opportunity, and we want to be first to market.
Yeah.
So we found,
I think, so recognizing that kind of that zeitgeist of those different kind of conditions that were going on in 2009, I think Freya coming in and having, the big thing is we had a shared vision, this kind of really ridiculous idea that, we could do something really unique with this architecture meets ice cream, spreading awareness about the worlds that we came from through a different media, but also wanting to strike while the iron's hot. I think the urgency to do something and having the energy as younger, 5 years ago, as we're now aged. But back then, you have that energy to go out there and take a risk because we knew it would be a tremendous amount of hustle no matter what.
So we bought a truck for $2,900 on Craigslist. We put it on our credit card.
My credit card.
And as you can see, it didn't even have any signage on it. This is us at Coachella. We bribed all of our friends. To work for us for free for Coachella tickets.
Yeah.
In
fact, the truck, we had to tow it from where we had bought it on Craigslist from Palmdale. And basically, another important, entrepreneurial term is bootstrapping. We figured out that if we joined AAA Platinum membership, it included one free 200-mile tow. And that would basically get us to the desert. So, we decided that Coachella was going to be our event to launch at, really get the brand out there and reach a lot of people. So the morning of Coachella, we basically pretended the truck broke down even though it never drove in the first place and called AAA. I think they're probably kind of onto us, but felt bad for us, and we had a good spirit. So we towed it out to the campground, which is where this, we basically plopped the truck down. And
we didn't know anything. Yeah. Talk about, food service handling, health laws. We get there, we have a booth. They're like, your booth needs to be covered on 3 sides. I'm like, okay, grab that tarp over there and let's duct tape it around the booth.
Put a hole in it so we could hand the sandwiches.
We didn't. There's practically no. That sign we had to print the next day because there's no. We were like, everyone will just see the ice cream truck and know what we're selling. Absolutely not in that sea of people in the campground.
People just wanted to charge their phones in there pretty much. So
yeah. So we learned a lot of, we learned on the fly.
Oh, she's flying.
Yeah. All right.
She's learning on the fly. But I think it was, coming out of Coachella, one, we kind of learned a lot of the basics very quickly because we sort of threw ourselves into the fire of running the business, of, managing people, dealing with our friends who were sort of running loose in the campground, going tent to tent, selling the sandwiches, how challenging it is to manage people, especially when they're your friends and they're kind of difficult to fire. The scalability, we right off the bat for Coachella, we realized if we were going to make as many sandwiches as we thought we were going to sell, which in the very beginning of Coolhaus, everything was pre-made, as these with the architectural punny names, with different flavors. We would have had to stay up, I think, 10 nights making ice cream in our Cuisinarts at home.
Yeah, we had like 3 little commercial quality Cuisinart makers that you get at like Sur La Table for $300. My mom's kitchen, which we almost set fire to.
That was the last straw, I think, for her.
Yeah, and just realized we didn't, and both of us at our full-time jobs, just physically not enough time. And I thought to myself, I bet you if I could find a cookie, like a bakery and an ice cream manufacturer to make our recipes for us. Little did I know that's called co-packing and private labeling, and that's how big brands, scale, right?
Yeah.
So they have the buying power, they're the experts, we didn't know anything. So we Google, and find the ice cream co-packer for Trader Joe's, who does all the ice cream for Trader Joe's, and this woman who does all the cookies for McDonald's.
Yeah, and I think they sort of, in a little bit of paying it forward, like someone had probably taken a chance on them when they were, younger and didn't know so much about what they were doing. And I think they sort of saw us as, we kind of had the stars in our eyes and wanted to do something fun and, just were, I think, interested in kind of this little movement we had with the truck and the vision with the brand. So luckily they kind of took a chance on us, and we had in place right away a model that we could grow with, which is partnering, with these co-packers to make the cookies, make the ice cream to our spec, to our guideline. We own the recipes, which is still the model we use, but you're not, every time you need to grow, you're not limited by what you can afford as far as manufacturing equipment.
And quickly thereafter, we switched co-packers a few times to ones that were better partners for us, because we do really crazy flavors, like, even our dirty mint chip, which is sold all over the country, has real mint leaves in it. We're the only ones who do that at supermarkets. Yeah. So it was throughout the years we found better fits.
So, Coachella, because it was such big volume, helped us put the scalability in place. And then just the mere exposure of it, coming back, literally the drive home from Coachella, we had a setting in our Twitter account at the time. Every time we get a new follower, we get an email. And I called Freya and she's like, I think someone hacked our Twitter account, or there's some sort of weird virus going on, because I'm getting a new follower every few seconds. I said, no, that's actually happening. A friend of mine who at the time wrote for Curbed, I don't know if any of you read Curbed, the real estate blog, said, if Coachella goes well, send me your logo and I'll do a piece on it. So I sent him like a JPEG of the logo, didn't even have a vector-based file at the time. And he wrote a actually not that nice article about it. It was something like, we don't really get it, but architecture and ice cream is apparently a thing, so try it out. It's like, thanks, Dan, it's a really nice piece. But it literally went viral. By the time, in a few hours we got back to LA, I had the editor of Dwell calling me, LA Times. LA Magazine was like, what's the news story on you guys? Like, I'm already reading all these other pieces about you. What's next? It's like, we haven't even put our logo on the truck yet. It was like a kind of almost wag the dog moment. But getting that kind of level of exposure was huge, and just getting, building the buzz around the brand so that there was demand that we came back to. And I think also we realized that at Coachella, we're going to scoop to order. It takes up a lot less space, and we, this is America, we want the freedom of choice for, pick your cookie, pick your ice cream model. So, coming back, we kind of had a lot of things quickly in place, and I think very quickly realized also we want to create this business as a brand that we can work, on the business, not in the business. How do we now run Coolhaus in a way, with these trucks that we can, get outside of things and continue to grow things and not be married to the day-to-day? And, Freya...
And so just looking at plugging into my model, I was like, oh, well, clearly we just need to have multiple trucks to create enough revenue to pay for at least one of our salaries full-time without us working on the truck every shift. So that's our second truck, called T1. The other one's called OG. They all have little nicknames.
And can anyone tell me the building behind it? Awesome. Frank Gary's actually here. He's coming after us to just say hi. April Fools, anyone know? Just thought I'd try that. Anyway, so yeah, that's the second truck. We expanded the fleet from there. We do now have 9 nationally. We're in, besides our trucks in LA, Austin, Dallas, and New York. So that's also, really helped us get the brand out there and grow the brand. What's the next slide?
Next.
But it came to a point in 2011 where it was time for the brand to mature, and we started to think about the trucks were amazing for, I think, being they're very nimble creatures. You can go to all these different neighborhoods. We've done a ton of events, for example, at USC, where you can be doing private catering or large-scale giveaways, activations, weddings, birthdays, selling at First Friday on Abbot Kinney in Venice Beach. So there's so many great uses for the trucks, and they're a cool kind of complete kit of parts. They showcase your brand. They break down on the freeway all the time, and they're also incredibly difficult to, control because they're autonomous vehicles, driving to the far corners of whatever city they belong in.
And
they're difficult to manage.
Yeah, we now have 70 employees in 3 states. So just think about that. That's
Think
fun.
about how awesome. It is great. It's a great culture, but we started to see we can't keep adding this model forever. And we did get an investor in 2011 that said, let's take the PR and the buzz and the marketing that comes from having the trucks and leverage that into different channels. The brick and mortar was actually already going on when we started to, when an investor came in and we really started to reorganize the strategy. Mainly, wanting to create a corporate headquarters was a great reason to have the shop, and that's the one there in Culver City, which is our flagship. A place that was centralized, that all the staff could know each other. When people were going, in and out in the trucks, a lot of times you wouldn't even see the event booker or another truck manager who was on another shift. So this really brought everything together, and the store became like an R&D test kitchen for trying different flavors that we could bring, to wholesale, to grocery stores, or having special events, having cooking classes. So it's sort of like a cultural center of the brand. So that was completed then. We're all very excited about it. You guys should definitely come. We just actually built a new office headquarters next door to the shop, which is I designed with my dad, so that was a lot of fun as well if you guys come by. But anyway, next slide. There's our Pasadena shop in Old Town on Colorado. But the other thing in 2011, as far as how the brand is really going to be able to mature and scale in a more sustainable way, how we're going to get this to be a national brand, how we're going to be, the Ben and Jerry's of our generation.
Yeah. So we, at that time during 2011, when we were building the first brick and mortar, we had one strategic investor put in about $300K. And he was one of our cookie co-packers. So we thought this is a good strategic alliance where we all have mutually, beneficial. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. It did not work out. Thankfully, our lawyer had written into, the agreement that if we didn't receive all the money by a certain point, we could convert the equity into a loan. So super stressful time. We're like, okay, we have to pause construction on the shop. What are we gonna do? Natasha's dad, who's also an architect, had dinner or lunch with a client of his, Bobby Margolis, who used to own Cherokee Jeans. I know that's way back in the day. It used to be a billion dollar company back in the day.
It is, yeah.
And Bobby was telling your dad was telling Bobby about Coolhaus and how we just had gotten into Whole Foods. We literally went to our local Whole Foods and brought in the sandwiches, and they decided to do a 3-store test. He was super excited about that. And Bobby was like, well, I just retired and I am fucking bored out of my mind. And I started a fund with my daughter and son-in-law, and I'd love for them to meet Natasha and Freya. So we meet with Dan, and then we, a couple times, and we meet with Bobby, and Bobby asks us in the meeting, first initially we come to him with a business plan of okay, we want 2 ice cream trucks in every city. We want $8 million at a $40 million valuation, something ridiculous. And he was like, well, ladies, let me ask you, what's your ultimate goal here? And I was like, well, Ben and Jerry's sold to Unilever for about $250 million back in the 2000s. They didn't make their own ice cream. Actually, Dreyer's made the majority of it. Dreyer's distributed it. They had a 4% operating profit margin. They built a brand, and we want to do that too for our generation.
So I think literally 2 meetings later, we were kind of signing the papers for a $1 million investment. We did have to give a substantial amount of equity, but we retained majority, Freya and I, which was great. And really, he said, if we're going to do this, the wholesale, the distribution, that's how we're going to be able to go all the way. That's the way that you could really scale, get the brand into as many hands as possible, get the best possible ice cream sandwich in the world, which is the goal.
And there's a clear exit, because if you're building all these trucks, what is the exit? If you're building all these ice cream stores, which historically, on average, ice cream shops make about, guess, how much do ice cream shops make a year?
Lose money?
Probably, yes.
Profit. I mean,
revenue.
Yeah,
Gross. They gross about 300,000.
Yeah.
a year, which is not very, I mean, think about that. You're putting in about maybe 150 to 250 grand to build it out. Like, when are you gonna get that money back? Then how do you exit?
Yeah,
right?
and if you think about, looking 10 years back, what was a chain of ice cream stores or yogurt stores that were, doing extremely well that are still dominating today? It's very, very hard to retain that value in that kind of retail setting. The pink berries come and go, and now we have the yogurt lands. It's very, very difficult, I think, to really have a lasting
I think even
impression.
Mavron, who bought Pinkberry, is still trying to figure out how do they exit out of Pinkberry right now.
So, moving towards the distribution side, that was a really key point for us, because now, as Lauren mentioned, we've really created something where we could go to, we're in every state. We're starting kind of with the gourmet grocery stores like Whole Foods, which is an incubator for many brands. And now the bigger retailers are looking to them, for answers as far as what are the cutting edge brands to bring to their stores. So we're just launching in Ralph's, Kroger, Safeway. So there's been this whole kind of movement as we've grown, kind of taking the bar more from the, I think more the edgy and the boutique and the craft ice cream brands are going much more mainstream, and we haven't had to change a single thing about how we make the product or the price point. So that's been a really, I think, for us, that's been a really key component of the growth. And then you can keep rolling out new products, which is the next thing I want to talk about.
Well, let's talk about this really quickly.
Yeah.
So, if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting out, you're prone to get stuck in analysis paralysis, right? And so there's this, notion in the lean startup of get to minimum viable product, build, measure, learn, action, not, where did it go? Action, not perfection, okay?
The sandwich is perfect.
So just using our CPG product as an example, when we launched in the beginning, like literally 2009, we thought we wanted the ice cream sandwiches to be square, right? We're like, it's more architectural, looks cooler, more unique. Once we got to mass, production and manufacturing, could not do it. They were like, absolutely not. All the die cuts are round. Like, it's going to be really hard to make the square cookie. So we were like, fine, let's drop that. Became a square, the circular ice cream sandwich. And then to the bottom left, we have that box, okay? That was the first packaging we had going into supermarkets. Now, that was extremely confusing for consumers seeing that in the frozen aisle, because one, what is in that box? They looked at it, doesn't say anything about an ice cream sandwich.
And also, they were all the same by flavor, except for a black and white label that told you the difference between any of them.
Yeah, so no flavor differentiation in terms of color. We thought it was cute. It looked like a truck. It was expensive. You had to hand sticker it. As soon as we changed it to the foil packaging with, a bunch
Luckily,
of
Whole
different...
Foods, they're an amazing partner in that they, sat down with us and gave feedback from the front line about here's what we think that could make things easier and better. So that's a really kind of special retailer partnership. But, they said you have to differentiate between the flavors, and we think you could get it in a bag, not a box. That will also help. Really South is about merchandising, so had the idea.
As soon as we switched that, sales increased by 500%.
Yeah.
Okay.
And between each flavor, there's a different color stripe, but having that shiny foil. Think about when you're walking down the freezer aisle and there's a million different products to choose from. There's condensation on the door, and you have like less than, basically you have a fraction of a second to catch someone's attention. What do we like? Bright, shiny objects. Our trucks also happen to be, chrome and bright colors. So really just kind of riffing off what we already had in place with the brand.
And the picture of the ice cream sandwich was key.
On it too, but the sandwich bag has chrome rims on the side, supposed to look like a truck. So the idea that the sandwich is parking in your freezer, you don't have to chase down the truck anymore. There's the two front windows with the little grill and headlights. So that was a lot of fun. And actually, in the first stage of the bag packaging, I had much more subtle colors that matched the the colors of the flavors. Like a beige, was like the apple, and a light red for the bacon. And I had my interns one summer go to a Whole Foods and just interview people, anonymously about what packaging they were drawn to. And guess what? They came back and said, people really like bright colors, and that's, they're drawn to a lot of green. So even within the bags, there was another iteration where I just started doing brighter colors that didn't necessarily have anything to do with the flavor. For example, that blue is salted caramel, and those even continue to sell even better. So we had some accounts that increased 1,000% sales, based on that. So and also just want to make the point that this is one of the biggest thing I've been able to do with my architectural background is all the packaging design we literally do in-house. So you never know how a skill set that you get is going to help you run a brand. People didn't tell me, oh, this is going to be useful for merchandising, food products, but it's actually not only been great to just have the vision be centralized like that, but it's also saved us a ton of money from having to hire a contractor to make that. There's the full line. This is an even older version, but so we're starting to talk about before. What's also great about the product development side and being able to scale that and grow that is once you have the brand established and people know what you're about, you can kind of do anything. So people expect from Coolhaus, innovation and fun and the architectural factor and the quality, the all natural. So we had obviously in our minds, Pints is an obvious extension.
Yeah.
So
and also once you have the distribution and retailer network in place, and the way that you increase revenue is obviously more products.
Yeah, getting that full, there are some markets where we have a whole door in the freezer aisle. So we had the Pints, they kind of look like paint buckets, which I think is kind of cool actually. I had to change the font going back one. Again, the build, measure, learn. No one over 40 could read the name of the flavor, which is, we're a young audience, but we did also, senior citizens love their ice cream too. So the new packaging has like the name of the flavor much bigger. There's just some things that you can only test and redesign so often, and then when you get it out there, it's like, a hammer hitting you over the head. Of course, like I need to change that. So even now as the brand is more mature, it still happens all the time, and you still evolve as you go. The bars, I also, looking at the bar, ice cream bar category, there had not been a lot of innovation. It was the same brands, Ben & Jerry, Haagen-Dazs, doing the same flavors for, it seemed like my entire lifetime. So we wanted to mix up the sweet and salty and the fun and the edginess again. So, on the right is the Mies Vanilla Row bar, Tisha Vanilla Bean and salted caramel milk chocolate rolled in pretzel. It's a mouthful, literally. The chocolate hazelnut, toasted almond, and salted chocolate coffee and natural Oreos. So, going to that same buyer, we had that relationship in the freezer section. You can keep, having fun with it and keep doing new things. So I love the innovation side. You wanna?
Yeah, I think, we put this up just because one of actually the first exercises that Bobby made us do was to create a vision book. And we thought, okay, really you want us to spend, $5,000-$7,000 hiring a designer to put together our wish list of things we want to accomplish with the company? And actually it was a really, really invaluable exercise. In that book, we put in there the cookbook. We made that happen. We put in there, we want to be sold at stadiums. We were sold at Citi Field and now the Forum. I think we put there we wanted to have some sort of fashion partnership. We're now sold at a bunch of Urban Outfitters. So what this taught us was, okay, like he was right, you need to visualize it and put it on paper, and then it becomes more clear in terms of figuring out like, okay, how am I going to accomplish this, and how do I hold myself accountable to this growth plan that I want to make happen and that I've visualized.
Yeah. I'm probably going to date myself, but Field of Dreams, is that all before everyone's time? Build it and they will come. It's true with business. I think once you start kind of talking about what's going to happen, also people will take you seriously about your vision.
It was also a really great deck just to send to potential investors, potential clients, potential accounts. Yeah.
And I think, from outlining those partnerships, for example, we have in the center there is our Dexter ice cream sandwich that we did a couple years ago. We got approached by, Showtime to do a sandwich for the finale season of Dexter. If some of you have seen the show, the killer combo. Got to be careful with the murder theme and ice cream, but I think it works. 2 different cookies, the 2 sides of Dexter, and a bloody cherry swirl. So we launched it at South by Southwest, and we did a bunch of activations with the truck around it, but then made a full, comprehensive prepackaged design. Those are actually like trademarked blood splatters they sent me to work with. It was like, wow, you have your, okay, don't want to mess with that blood splatter. Don't know what's going to happen if I do. But it was a full-on partnership with them, and we're able to use all our channels to roll out that sandwich. And it not only, a lot of people ask us, how was the financial setup of that partnership? You must have had to give them back a lot of the dollars as a royalty to use the brand and to, leverage kind of their following. And actually, they paid us quite a bit to create the sandwich, to activate with the trucks and do all these giveaways to promote it, to do PR campaigns around it. So I think not only, kind of laying out some ideas for partnerships on paper, but realizing that, they can be of huge financial benefit to you, and you can get paid to do them and share not only your following, but access the following of all these other brands. That's the way to really kind of open it up. And I've always felt Coolhaus is such a great canvas for their brands. If some of you have had the product, the edible wrapper, we print all the time logos and messages on that edible wrapper. You can wrap the trucks, you can create custom flavors. So we always have a lot of fun and love to innovate by kind of collaborating with other corporations in that way. We can go back to, yeah. A few more. Right. So the book, just to kind of, was interesting as we were growing in grocery stores and distribution. That's obviously about kind of remaking the same core product many times and getting it as far-reaching as you can. Now it's sold in the Philippines and Guam, and I just learned in the Cayman Islands. So if any of you are trying to move around some money, you can go and get your Coolhaus there. But at the same time, what's fun I think as you get bigger is we were kind of going, broader, but we got approached about this opportunity to do a cookbook, which is very much about almost doing the opposite. When we had to go back and retest a lot of the recipes that we hadn't made at home in years. So thinking about the kitchen scale and getting back to the basics, and also getting back to the roots of the story and telling the story through the book. So it was a kind of full arc of getting bigger, but also really getting smaller, more intimate and personal, and sharing that with the cookbook was a really fun experience.
Okay, so next. So I, being, I guess, having sort of entrepreneur ADD a little bit, also being, we're married to each other. So after doing that for 4 years, sprint and a marathon at the same time, I thought, okay, I think it's best if I step down. I was CEO, CFO. I can find someone to replace me, a couple people to replace me, and I think I want to do something new. So I looked at the alcohol space. They have high multiples for valuation. I think right now they trade at like 6 to 7 times gross, as opposed to ice cream, which is 2 to 3 times gross. There isn't, many of the alcohol brands are owned by big conglomerates like Pernod Ricard, Brown-Forman, Diageo. There's not that many female brand owners, and there are very few millennial brand owners. So I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna raise, I've so far raised about $500,000. And if I'm gonna do this, I have to dominate a niche first, sort of the way that we did with Coolhaus, where we were dominating the niche of ice cream sandwiches, right? And I wanna stay true to this ethos of like all natural, premium, fun, and innovative. So we looked at the Jell-O shot space, okay? Sounds so ridiculous, the Jell-O shot space. And noticed that no one was pre-packaging it. If they were using artificial ingredients and neutral grain spirits, so not like real bourbon or like 5 times distilled vodka or 100% agave blanco tequila. So they were not cocktail based at all, and they didn't taste good. They were really, really sweet. So I thought, all right, I'm gonna go out and reinvent the Jell-O shot. So about 1.5 years of like packaging design and like federal government approvals, my God, like when Coolhaus wants to put out a new flavor on the shelves, you don't have to go through the FDA or anything. You just put it out there. They just check the nutritional facts. Great. There you go. Put it on the shelf. For alcohol, they check your formulation. That takes about 2 to 3 months. They check your label. That takes 2 to 3 months. So there's a lot of, and the government shutdown was happening at that time. So we just launched this last October our all-natural craft cocktail, ready to serve jelly shots, because obviously Jello is trademarked, in flavors like an old fashioned, Planter's Punch, Margarita, Moscow Mule, and Meyer Lemon Drop. And we launched at a couple big chain accounts, Total Wine and More, which is like a Bevmo, Fresh and Easy. We just got the green light from Whole Foods. So definitely leveraging my relationships at the big chain grocery stores that Coolhaus is sold at.
And similarly with the idea with Coolhaus, where once you've built the brand, you can kind of take it so many other places. Freya's planning next. Once you establish, okay, the key assets are, ready to drink, but also repositioning and reinventing, working on a craft spritzer line, in bottles. So you can kind of keep, I think.
Yeah. So have you guys been to Honeycut? Yeah. So I just signed a deal with Proprietors LLC, who owns Honeycut, Death & Co., and we're working together on a bottled cocktail line to launch at the end of in Q4 through some of these retailers off-premise and also some on-premise bar accounts.
That it?
That's
So
it.
I think that's us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions? I'm sure there's a few in the audience. Stand up and scream it out, because we don't have microphones.
Do all the Fresh and Easies carry this, like with the one on campus?
Yeah.
Excellent question.
Yeah, only the ones that have liquor licenses. Yeah. So I think the one near you only has a beer and wine
Do you know
license.
in this area where
The closest is Jason's Liquor, which is near Calmart on like 9th and I forget, Spring or 9th and Main. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the biggest obstacle you found in terms of scaling?
I think the most challenging for me, I think, was the management of people. And again, we kind of talked about how we reorganized the strategy to more of the wholesale distribution, and that's more about being product oriented and growing. And you can really, we've gone from 3 stores to these 5,000 and not changed much about the overhead. However, I think having the 70 employees on the truck management and shop and, event side of the business, that's where you build your culture, right? Like that's where, a lot of people who work for us are part-time musicians, or being in LA, they're, in acting and theater, or a lot of artists. And I love that kind of fun interaction that we have at the office and in the space now. But it's a variable every time you have an employee. Everyone has their different ways of being motivated and their quirks. And, I don't expect people, unless they're becoming, part of the key corporate team, I don't expect them to, scoop in the ice cream shop forever. So even though I think we retain people really well, we've had some people work for us for 4 and 5 years, there definitely is turnover, so that's challenging. And there's just a lot of, in the summer, it's like high school kids who are, about to go to college or are working in the shop. So I think you have to really work to find ways to make it about more than just like, you're not just, scooping ice cream. This is about being the millennial Ben and Jerry's and share with them the vision, whether that's the vision book or, you know.
Besides implementing structurally, like we had like a training program, and my sister worked at Chipotle corporate. So I was like, can you please just send me your operations and employee manual so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So making sure that that's all in place. But I think, managing people is tough.
What are some of the challenges of starting a food truck?
I don't think we have enough time to,
What are some main ones that?
I think talking about it in comparison to a brick and mortar, there's so many variables. Like the trucks.
No 2 days are the same.
Yeah, the truck will break down. Your employees will steal. Like how are, unless you have cameras on the truck, even then, you're not going to be checking the cameras the entire time.
You know, each city is also very different as
The
far as the food
regulations,
truck codes.
yeah.
And, you know, LA is actually one of the only cities that you can legally pull up on the sidewalk and sell. And, you know, in New York, where we have trucks, it's not legal at all to do that. People do it anyway because it's New York and they just, you know, love the controversy, I guess. In Austin, it's called trailer parks, so these set lots. Same thing in Dallas. So that's a huge variable from city to city as far as what's allowed. So kind of going into each city with the truck could be.
And I think the training, because you know, you can easily find people who've worked in like a brick and mortar establishment. To find people who are trained in working a food truck, that's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of overcoming the challenge of getting people to take you seriously, from starting from like a goofy little ice cream sandwich, food truck, whatever, to being a real business that's, I mean, covering the country and becoming that serious brand where we're the next Ben and Jerry's? I feel like there was certainly some level of a gap there, and in hopping that was probably not just a walk in the park.
You're saying we were goofy?
I mean, it was fun, and it was like,
No, I think that's a great question. I don't think that challenge is over, to be honest. I think the way that I approach it is you can't let what you don't know feel like a limitation. That actually can be empowering. You know, for example, if you can walk through a wall if you don't know it's there. That's kind of like a motto for me, which is that even now in the span of running Coolhaus these 5-6 years, I look back at things I did a few years ago, risks I took that even after this amount of experience, which isn't a tremendous amount, I wouldn't do, but I'm so glad I did them because all the data would tell you not to go into Whole Foods and do a $5 architecturally inspired ice cream sandwich, whatever. But you know, you can make I think your youth and a little bit of naivete actually work in your favor, and that's how the greatest brands get built. They don't get built from someone who's retired from dryers coming back and saying this is how it's done, and I'm gonna create another.
I mean, same with Ludlow's cocktail company. Now, even just now being in the industry a year and a half, I'm like, I am crazy. Why did I do this? It's so hard to sell alcohol. It's all about distribution and demos and marketing. I mean, I kind of knew that, but I'm so glad that I'm doing it now. Yeah. But it's almost funny. Use that ignorance to your advantage.
And also I just think thinking big and talking big. You know, in the beginning it was like survival day to day. Is the truck going to make it, to whatever, to MySpace, to their catering event? Are we going to get through this day and live to tomorrow? That was really how we were operating. And once you start to building that scalability so we could kind of work on it and not in it, we're able to really think about the future and then talk about the future. Okay, this is our plan in 3 years. This is where we see it going. That's, I think, how we're able to attract more money. So I think, and I encourage so many more women entrepreneurs to think this way, because I don't hear it enough, where, really thinking of going all the way, talking about Ben & Jerry's, putting the idea in people's mind that's what you're going for. And I think the same model that we talked about, kind of throwing yourself into the fire. Like if we say it, it can happen. So I definitely think that's helped. But honestly, just like I have grown up 5 or 6 years in running the business. So part of it is that it has been challenging in the past that you're limited by your, as I've been growing up, the business has been growing up too. So there's a little bit of organic, growth in that. And it's easier now that I'm 31 to hire, 25-year-olds, and we're not the same age. It does help, but I think, use it to your advantage more than your weakness is really the main goal there. And you can surround yourself by, I have a director of operations who's, in her late 40s, and now we have the luxury, I think, of bringing in people who we can, are not going to need a higher salary, but they could bring 25 years of experience to the table, but they're working for you. So, yeah.
Kind of a small business question in regards to food trucks. Are all of your expenses like gas, maintenance, is all that tax deductible?
Clarify that a little bit. Is it tax deductible?
So like, I know we might go on a tangent, but like in regards to like, let's say you own a business, so like traveling expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they're all expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like maybe one incentive, right? to why?
Well, it was no different.
Well,
You know,
just wanna
that's also
make sure
specific to
that
food
there's
trucks, I would say.
more money coming in
Yeah.
than going out.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it all boils down.
And I would say to that point too, you know, it's helpful to want to write off aspects of the business as you're getting to the end of the year for taxes. Then again, if you're trying to exit, like we may potentially be down the line, you do want to show, you know, some profit is attractive to investors. So some of that, you don't want to be so worried about that because that's more of a short-term benefit. It can be, you know, you can make a lot more off showing bigger profits in a long-term way because you'll be worth more, you know, when you exit or when you get an investor.
First of all, I just want to thank you for coming. It's pretty awesome to have your product and eating it, and then like you're in the customer.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could touch upon strategic partnerships and how you garner those, and whether you choose who to go with.
I think, you know, in the beginning, we did certainly have the luxury of some inquiries would come to us. Like in the very beginning, we were overwhelmed with the amount of business we would have. We could barely keep up with it. Then we got to a certain point where we said, especially as we were growing, you know, this is not going to just fall into our laps forever. We need to, you know, do our own outreach, create our own sales team. Let's, again, you know, it's that as the business is maturing, who are the people that we want to be aligned with and work with? And especially being the seasonal business that we are, there is still a time when we're kind of overwhelmed and can barely keep up, but there's half the year when we aren't quite as busy, you know, the winter, where we can really kind of get some perspective and say, you know, where is this going? Can we do more projects like that Dexter partnership and Sandwich? So, you know, I have my event coordination team half the year. We create, you know, lists of who we want to work with, you know, in different categories, fashion, tech, entertainment. And we write to them and we say, like, hey, do you want to talk about doing something, you know, cool with ice cream? Can we come in and bring you some samples? I think you really have to start to take the initiative.
Yeah, and we use LinkedIn is awesome for that and finding the decision maker to pitch.
Yeah.
Like for example, we just, our event coordinator in New York just had a meeting with J. Crew randomly. Just was like, okay, like I'm gonna pitch J. Crew. And now Jenna Lyons wants to sit down with us and do a whole thing on Coolhaus and us as female entrepreneurs. I was like, sweet. But that's just,
You never know.
you never know what's gonna, the worst thing that could happen is they just don't reply and they say no or whatever.
Yeah, and I think once you get a certain mentality, we'll still get some inquiries like maybe someone wants to book the truck for a 1-hour event, and you know maybe it's, for example, I just had this conversation today with Frito-Lay, and you tell them, sure, we can do that, but here's also what we can do. You know, taking something that may come and repositioning it, they may not know what you're capable of. I mean, you know, someone could say, you're an ice cream truck catering company, and someone could say, no, it's the, you know, a CPG brand of the future trying to really innovate, and you have to also tell them, you know, what your brand can do for them. So I think it's all about, again, thinking big and taking every opportunity and taking it to the max. Yeah.
So how do you come up with these different eccentric ice cream flavors, and have you had one that failed?
That's a good question. You know, speaking of the partnership, sometimes a client will say to us, you know, create an ice cream flavor that evokes whatever, such and such plot in a movie. One of the first ones we ever did was that movie 2012. Do you remember? They came to us and they said, can you do a special flavor to treat our, you know, cast and crew? And I said, the movie wasn't out yet. So I said, give me some, you know, keywords that we could work with. And they said, the Vatican burning end of the world. I was like, okay, I can work with that. But we came up with the, you know, Vatican and red wine, Rome, red wine reduction ice cream with cinnamon and black pepper. And we called it Lamb Brunelleschi after the architect Brunelleschi, the Duomo. Some of you know him. So whole architecture inside, nerdy. But anyway, that flavor ended up staying on our menu for a few years. So sometimes it, you know, it comes from, I think, a client pushing us to do something cool. But honestly, a lot of it is just like really paying attention to what we're eating and what people are serving, and thinking about, you know, is there a way that a savory could unexpectedly become a sweet? So, for example, started seeing a lot of kind of, you know, repositioned fried chicken and waffle dishes at restaurants, and there's maple syrup in there, there's caramelized sage, there's, you know, that salty sweet, there's the crispiness of the skin. We thought, you know, maybe this could be worked into an ice cream, and fried chicken and waffle is such an homage to LA, you know, to LA LA dining. So we did we infused homemade caramel with organic fried chicken skins, strained the skins, added cayenne, sage, black pepper to evoke that, that savory notion, swirled it in brown butter ice cream and waffle bits. Sorry if I'm making you hungry. But, it worked really well, and that's been one of our top selling flavors. So, then again, it doesn't always work. We had the idea for a Waldorf salad ice cream at one point, which you laugh, but it could have, blue cheese base and then caramelized walnut apple could have been good. When you even got close to that bite and the smell of the blue cheese, you kind of wanted to throw up. So we hated it. So we brought it to, a dinner at a friend's house just to get rid of it. And turns out our friend Mark, not only did he love the Waldorf salad ice cream, which I can't understand, he still apparently asks our mutual friend Sarah all the time, when are they bringing back the Waldorf salad ice cream? He ate like an entire tub over, a week. So there's always light at the end of the tunnel, but yeah, they can't all, you just have to fail fast too sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you so much for coming. I have a question in regards to developing a brand and creating, knowing who your target, demographic is for your brand. What advice would you give for people who are starting companies, whether in the food industry or any industry, about developing their own brand and making it unique to you and not like everybody else?
Do you want to, or?
Well, I was going to say, I think doing a little market research, meaning polling your friends and family, giving them a couple options of where you think the brand wants to go and getting that actual feedback. And I think once you get that and you have a pretty good idea, just put it out there. I mean, I don't, there's that notion of fail fast and minimum viable product, build, measure, learn. You're not going to know what's going to happen until you put it out there in reality.
And also I think it's good to kind of dominate a niche in terms of, okay, fine, we're a millennial ice cream brand, but it's for all ages, it's for all types. So you don't want your niche to totally control you because it can be limiting. So thinking of ways that your brand can sort of reference that kind of cultural, cross-section, but realizing that cultural cross-section is hugely aspirational to a lot of other groups, right? So there may be, if something is cool and millennial, that also means that moms may want the cool millennial thing because then they can show off to their kids that they're awesome. So there's a lot of ancillary, and I still think it's important to think big, even though you may kind of represent something to certain people.
And what was it like for you guys in developing your guys' brand for Coolhaus or for jelly shots? What was that process like?
Yeah, I think, just what I really learned from it, and I think what we continue to do is just be true to yourself. I think our brand represents a lot about us and what we like to eat. We like to have fun. I mean, to me, it's so important to not take yourself too seriously and be whimsical.
And I think nowadays, the story behind the brand is so important. So definitely staying true to that authenticity is really key these days.
People want to know.
People can see through the BS. Yeah.
Good note to end on.
Yeah.
Everyone give a round of applause.